Agent Laramie leaned forward, her piercing blue eyes fixed on the man seated across the table. How does a simple bookkeeper from Linford Green evade the FBI for 6 years? Ulric Asquith chuckled, a low, almost melodic sound that danced on the edge of mockery. Simple, he said, his tone as light as a feather. I'm not as simple as you think. The room fell into an uneasy silence, broken only by the faint hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. The interrogation room was bare, save for the table, 3 chairs, and the mirrored glass behind which a team of agents undoubtedly stood, scrutinizing every word and movement. Yet, Ulric's demeanor remained unervingly calm. 6 years earlier, Ulric Asquith was an unassuming man in his mid-30s, married to the vivacious and sharp-witted Odilia. They lived in a modest terraced house on Fernley Street, the kind of place where neighbors exchanged biscuits over the fence and the most exciting gossip revolved around Mrs. Caldwell's overly ambitious rose garden. Ulric worked as a bookkeeper for a small logistics firm, a job that paid just enough to keep the lights on and the occasional dinner out. But there was a secret to Ulric, one that even Odilia didn't suspect. Beneath his mild-mannered exterior lay a mind as sharp as a surgeon's scalpel and as calculating as a chess grandmaster. For years, he had harbored a simmering disdain for the mundane life he'd been dealt. The world was vast and full of opportunity, yet here he was balancing ledgers and arguing over council tax. It started innocently enough. A discrepancy in his company's accounts that no one else noticed. A single misplaced decimal point could mean thousands left unaccounted for. Ulric corrected it, of course, but not before filing away the thought. What if I didn't? The opportunity came one rainy Tuesday when his supervisor, a bumbling man named Percival, handed him access to the firm's dormant accounts. Just tidy these up when you've got a minute, mate, Percival had said, oblivious to the glint in Ulric's eye. By the end of the week, Ulric had siphoned £50,000 into an offshore account. It was small enough not to raise immediate suspicion but substantial enough to ignite a thrill he hadn't felt in years. That night, he and Odilia celebrated their wedding anniversary at a Michelin-starred restaurant. She marveled at his sudden generosity, and he smiled, silently toasting his ingenuity. The theft wasn't discovered until months later, and by then, Ulric had already covered his tracks. He used proxies, layered transactions, and a labyrinth of shell companies to make the money vanish like smoke. The firm's accountants chalked it up to an internal error and moved on. But for Ulric, this was only the beginning. Over the next 2 years, he expanded his operations, targeting small businesses with lax oversight. He was meticulous, never taking more than what could plausibly be explained away. His background as a bookkeeper proved invaluable. He knew exactly how to hide his tracks. And all the while, he maintained the facade of a loving husband and dutiful employee. But no con is perfect. A pattern emerged, small, almost imperceptible, but there. The FBI's Financial Crimes Division picked up on it, and Agent Vivian Laramie was assigned to the case. Laramie was a legend within the Bureau, known for her dogged determination and razor-sharp instincts. She quickly realized she wasn't dealing with a typical embezzler. This was someone who operated with the precision of a surgeon and the creativity of an artist. One evening, as Odilia sat in their cozy living room flipping through a magazine, Ulric's phone buzzed with an encrypted message. He excused himself, retreating to his study where a second laptop, hidden behind a false panel in his desk, awaited. He was in the middle of transferring funds from a shell company in Cyprus when he heard a faint creak. Turning, he found Odilia standing in the doorway, her arms crossed. "What are you doing, Ulric?" she asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. His mind raced. "Just balancing some personal accounts," he said, offering his most disarming smile. "At 11 at night?" He sighed, closing the laptop. "Fine. It's a side gig. Helps with the bills." Odilia studied him for a long moment before nodding. "Just don't overwork yourself, darling. You've been so distant lately." Her concern was genuine, and for a fleeting second, guilt pierced Ulric's carefully constructed armor. But he quickly dismissed it. "This is for us," he told himself. "For our future." By the 4th year, the FBI was closing in. Laramie had pieced together enough of the puzzle to identify Ulric as a suspect. But every time they thought they had him cornered, he slipped through their fingers. He changed identities, shifted operations, and even staged his own death once. leaving behind a convincingly charred car wreck in a remote forest. Odilia mourned him deeply, unaware of the truth. Ulric watched from afar, his heart aching as she stood by his empty grave. But he couldn't risk contact. Not yet. In the 6th year, Ulric made his first mistake. Growing complacent, he used a familiar proxy to transfer a significant sum. It pinged on Laramie's radar immediately. She traced it back to a rented flat in Brighton and orchestrated a raid. Ulric was apprehended, his calm exterior belying the storm within. "You've been clever, Mr. Asquith," Laramie said as she slid a file across the table. It contained photos, bank statements, and a detailed timeline of his crimes. But cleverness only gets you so far. Ulric leaned back, a faint smile playing on his lips. "If you've caught me," he said, "it's because I wanted to be caught." Laramie's brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" He shrugged. 6 years of cat and mouse, Agent Laramie. Didn't you ever wonder why I left breadcrumbs? The room went silent again, the weight of his words sinking in. Ulric's confession was not one of defeat but of triumph. He had played them all, the FBI, his employers, even Odilia. But why? As Laramie pressed him for answers, Ulric revealed the final twist. His embezzlement wasn't for personal gain. Every penny had been funneled into secret accounts under Odilia's name. She would never want for anything again. "You see," he said, his voice soft, "every move I made was for her. To give her the life she deserves." Laramie's eyes narrowed. "And what about you?" Ulric smiled. "Oh, me? I'm just the husband who fooled everyone." Odilia sat in the courtroom months later, tears streaming down her face as the verdict was read. Ulric was sentenced to 20 years, but his expression remained serene. He caught her gaze as he was led away, mouthing 3 words, "I love you." For Odilia, the truth was a bitter pill to swallow. She had loved a man she barely knew, a man who had lied and manipulated, but also sacrificed everything for her. And as she walked out of the courtroom, she couldn't help but wonder, was he a hero or a villain? The answer perhaps lay somewhere in between. The story did not end with the gavel strike. Months after Ulric's incarceration, Odilia received a package. It was plain, unmarked, and arrived without warning. Inside was a single envelope containing a letter and a small, intricately carved wooden box. She unfolded the letter, her heart pounding as she recognized Ulric's handwriting. "Dearest Odilia, if you are reading this, it means the dust has settled and you have moved on or are trying to. I can only hope you understand why I did what I did. Every risk, every sleepless night, every lie was for you. To secure a future where you would never have to worry again. But there is one more thing I must ask of you. Open the box." Her hands trembled as she lifted the lid of the wooden box. Inside was a key and a note with an address scribbled hastily. Curiosity battled caution, but in the end curiosity won. The next day she drove to the location, a storage unit on the outskirts of town. The key fit perfectly, and as the door rolled up, Odilia gasped. The unit was filled with neatly labeled boxes, each containing documents, cash, and gold bars. A lifetime's worth of security. Another note lay on top, written in the same familiar hand. "This is yours. Use it wisely and remember, even in my darkest moments, my love for you was always my guiding light." Odilia stood there, tears streaming down her face. For all his flaws, Ulric had kept his promise. He had given her a future, though at a cost neither of them could ever truly repay. Back in his cell, Ulric sat on his cot, a faint smile playing on his lips. He had lost his freedom, but he had won the game. And in his heart that was enough. Thank you for being with us on our channel in Rahim TV. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and smash the like button.